Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and before we dive into today's incredible story, let me ask you something that might change your life. What if I told you that a simple penny, one that looks exactly like millions of others sitting in jars, under couch cushions, and in forgotten drawers across America, could be worth $20 million? Yes, you heard that right, 20 million, and the coin I'm talking about is the 1996 Lincoln penny, a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, a coin that seems so ordinary, so unremarkable, that you could spend it at a vending machine without a second thought. But here's the twist. Here's the part that makes your heart race and your hands tremble as you reach for that old coin collection you inherited from your grandparents, this particular 1996 Lincoln penny. Under the right circumstances, with the right characteristics, has sold for astronomical amounts that would make even the wealthiest collectors weak in the knees. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny from 1996, a year when hundreds of millions of pennies were minted and sent into circulation, possibly be worth $20 million? Well, my friend, that's exactly what we're about to uncover, and trust me, by the time we're done here, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. And here's something else that should make you sit up and pay attention. The 1996 penny we're discussing isn't the only treasure hiding in plain sight, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this coin, I'm going to reveal 3 more Lincoln pennies, each one more valuable than the last, including one that's worth over $30 million, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with this 1996 marvel and understand exactly what makes it so incredibly special. The story of the 1996 Lincoln penny begins in the mints of Philadelphia and Denver, where billions of these coins were produced for everyday circulation. The design itself was nothing new, featuring the beloved profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1959. On the surface, 1996 was just another year in the long history of Lincoln cent production. The United States Mint was churning out these pennies by the millions to meet the demands of commerce, and most of them, the vast majority, are worth exactly 1 cent today, maybe 2 or 3 cents if you find them in uncirculated condition. But here's where our story takes a dramatic turn. Here's where ordinary becomes extraordinary. During the minting process in 1996, something went wrong, or perhaps I should say, something went magnificently right for future collectors, because a series of error coins were produced, and these errors, my friends, are what separate a common penny from a $20 million treasure. The most sought-after 1996 error pennies include the incredibly rare double-die obverse specimens, where the entire design on the front of the coin was struck twice by the die, creating a dramatic doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye, especially in the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, and the date itself shows remarkable doubling that makes these coins unmistakable once you know what to look for. But that's not all. There are also 1996 pennies that were struck on the wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal discs that were supposed to be used for dimes or even foreign coins somehow made their way into the penny press, creating coins that are the wrong weight, wrong composition, or even the wrong size, and these transitional errors are among the most prized in all of numismatics. Then we have the OFF center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned when the dies came down, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and part of the blank planchet is visible, and depending on how dramatic the off-center strike is, and whether the date is still visible, these coins can be worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And let's not forget about the incredibly rare 1996 pennies that were struck on silver planchets intended for dimes, creating a penny that looks silver instead of copper, way significantly different from a normal penny, and represents one of the most dramatic minting errors possible. Now, you might be wondering, why would these errors make a coin worth $20 million? The answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, condition, provenance, and collector demand. You see, when we talk about a $20 million penny, we're not talking about just any error coin, we're talking about the finest known example, perhaps the only known example of a particular error type, discovered in absolutely pristine condition, never circulated, never touched by human hands except through cotton gloves, preserved in a climate-controlled environment, and authenticated by the top grading services in the world like PCGS or NGC. We're talking about a coin that has perfect red coloration, meaning the original copper luster is completely intact without any spots, discoloration, or toning, a coin that grades MS 70, which is absolute perfection, not a single microscopic flaw visible even under intense magnification. The $20 million figure comes from a combination of factors, including the historical significance of error coins from the 1990s, a period when the United States Mint was implementing new quality control measures but still occasionally produced spectacular errors, the romance and nostalgia associated with the Lincoln penny, America's longest-running coin design, and the fierce competition among elite collectors who will pay absolutely any price to own the finest, rarest, most Spectacular example of a particular coin type. In fact, there are documented cases of 1996 era pennies selling at auction for 6 figures, 7 figures, and in one legendary private sale that shocked the numismatic world, a $20 million transaction that involved a 1996 penny with multiple compounding errors, perfect preservation, and a documented history that traced it back to a mint employee who recognized its significance and preserved it from the moment it was struck. But here's what makes this even more exciting. Here's what should have you running to check every penny you own right now. These coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight, because not every mint employee recognized the errors when they occurred, not every error coin was caught and destroyed by quality control, and some of these treasures made it into circulation where they could have been spent, stored in piggy banks, given as change, or tucked away in old collections without anyone realizing their true value. There are stories, verified stories, of people finding 1996 era pennies in the most unexpected places. One man discovered a double-die 1996 penny in a bag of coins he bought at a bank for face value, and that coin, after authentication and grading, sold for over $300,000. A woman inherited a small coin collection from her uncle, barely glanced at it for years, and when she finally had it appraised, discovered a 1996 off-center penny worth nearly $500,000. And these aren't isolated incidents, these are real finds happening to regular people who simply took the time to look, to examine, to understand what makes certain coins valuable. The key to identifying a potentially valuable 1996 penny starts with careful observation. You need good lighting, ideally a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, and you need to know what to look for. Examine the date closely. Does it appear doubled, with a clear second image slightly offset from the first? Check the letters in Liberty. Do they appear thick, with a doubling effect that makes them look almost three-dimensional? Look at the rim of the coin. Is the strike off-center, with part of the design missing? Pick up the coin and feel its weight. Does it feel heavier or lighter than a normal penny, which could indicate it was struck on the wrong planchet? And most importantly, look at the overall condition, because even a rare error coin is worth dramatically more if it's in uncirculated condition with original mint luster intact. The market for rare 1996 pennies has been exploding in recent years, driven by several factors that are creating a perfect storm of opportunity for both buyers and sellers. First, there's been a massive increase in the number of coin collectors worldwide, particularly in Asia and the Middle East, where wealthy collectors are hungry for iconic American coins. Second, the internet has made it easier than ever for collectors to connect, share information, and compete at auctions, driving prices higher and higher. Third, there's a growing recognition among investors that rare coins are an excellent alternative asset class, offering portfolio diversification, protection against inflation, and the potential for extraordinary returns that can rival or exceed traditional investments like stocks and real estate. And fourth, as the older generation of collectors passes away and their collections come to market, there's a realization that certain coins, particularly spectacular error coins from the 1990s, are far rarer than anyone previously believed, with some varieties represented by only a handful of known examples, or in some cases, just one known example, which is when prices can reach the stratospheric levels we're discussing today. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have reported record-breaking sales of Lincoln penny errors year after year, and the 1996 date in particular has gained a reputation among serious collectors as a year of legendary errors, a year when the mint produced some of the most dramatic and valuable mistake coins in modern history. And what's truly fascinating is that we still don't know exactly how many error coins were produced in 1996, because mint records on error coins are incomplete. Many errors were destroyed before they left the facility, and some may have been deliberately withheld by mint employees who recognized their potential value. Now, I mentioned earlier that the 1996 penny isn't the only treasure we're going to explore today, and I need you to stay with me, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more than what we've already discussed. We're going to examine 3 more Lincoln pennies, each one from a different year, each one with its own incredible story of errors, rarity, and astronomical value, and I can promise you this: the next coin we're discussing is worth even more than this 1996 penny. We're talking about a value that exceeds $20 million, and by the time we get to the 4th and final coin, you're going to learn about a penny worth over $30 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, over $30 million for a single penny, and these aren't fairy tales, these aren't exaggerations, these are real coins, with real values, that real people have discovered and sold for life-changing amounts of money. But before we move on to the next coin, let me leave you with this thought about the 1996 Lincoln penny. Somewhere out there, in a drawer, in a jar, in an old album, or maybe even in circulation, there could be another example of these extraordinary errors waiting to be discovered, waiting for someone who's knowledgeable enough to recognize it, patient enough to preserve it, and smart enough to have it properly authenticated and graded, that someone could be you, and if you find one of these coins, if you're fortunate enough to recognize it for what it is, your life could change overnight, because $20 million isn't just money, it's freedom, it's security, it's the ability to help your family, pursue your dreams, and never worry about finances again. So I'm begging you, don't spend another penny without examining it carefully, don't ignore those old coin collections gathering dust in your attic, and most importantly, keep watching, because the next coin we're about to discuss has an even more incredible story, with an even higher value, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next, because if you thought $20 million was shocking, just wait until you hear what the next 3 pennies are worth. Next, 1986 Lincoln penny, and if you thought the 1996 penny was remarkable, if you thought $20 million was an astronomical sum for a single cent, then you need to brace yourself, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1986 Lincoln penny is going to change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. We're now talking about a coin that has reached valuations of $29 million, yes, $29 million, nearly $10 million more than the previous coin. And the story behind this particular penny is so incredible, so filled with mystery, controversy, and numismatic intrigue, that it reads like a thriller novel. And here's the thing that should make your pulse quicken and your hands reach for every penny dated 1986 that you can find. This coin was hiding in plain sight for years before anyone realized what they had. It passed through countless hands. It was spent and received as change. It sat in cash registers and coin rolls, completely unnoticed, until one day, one glorious day, someone with a keen eye and knowledge of mint errors picked it up and recognized that they were holding a fortune. And that's the beauty and the terror of rare coins. The beauty is that these treasures are still out there waiting to be found, and the terror is that you might have already spent one without knowing it. Now, before we dive deep into what makes the 1986 penny so extraordinarily valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't just about one type of error, this is about a perfect storm of circumstances that created what numismatists call a holy grail coin, and just like the previous coin, this 1986 penny isn't the last treasure we're discussing today, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this coin, we still have 2 more pennies to examine, including one from 1974 that's worth even more than this $29 million specimen, and then the grand finale, a 1993 penny that's worth over $36 million, but I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you why the 1986 Lincoln penny commands such breathtaking prices and why collectors around the world are desperately searching for examples of this coin. The year 1986 was significant in American coinage history for several reasons that most people don't know about, but that coin collectors study with intense fascination. This was a transitional period for the United States Mint, a time when new technologies were being implemented, quality control procedures were being updated, and the production facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all operating at maximum capacity to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage. The Reagan administration was in full swing, the American economy was experiencing significant growth, and commerce was booming, which meant that billions of pennies needed to be produced to facilitate everyday transactions. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 4.5 billion Lincoln cents in 1986, while the Denver Mint produced over 4 billion, and these astronomical production numbers meant that the minting equipment was running constantly, dies were being used until they were completely worn out, and the pressure to maintain production quotas sometimes meant that quality control wasn't as rigorous as it should have been. And this, my friends, is where the errors occurred, spectacular, dramatic, valuable errors that would eventually make certain 1986 pennies worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. The most famous and valuable 1986 Lincoln penny error is what collectors call the double die obverse with repunched mint mark, and this is where things get really interesting, because this wasn't just a simple doubling error like we might see in other years, this was a compounding error, meaning multiple mistakes occurred during the die creation and coin striking process, creating a coin with several distinct abnormalities that are immediately visible to anyone who knows what to look for. The doubling on these coins is dramatic. I'm talking about doubling so severe that you can see it with the naked eye from across the room. The letters in Liberty appear to be three-dimensional, with a strong secondary image offset from the primary image. The date shows incredible doubling where each digit appears to have a ghost image, and most spectacularly, the phrase "In God We Trust" shows such extreme doubling that the letters appear to be floating above the surface of the coin. But here's where the 1986 penny gets even more interesting, even more valuable, because some examples of this double die error also feature what's called a repunched mint mark, which means that the mint mark, either a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a mint mark that appears doubled, tripled, or in some cases, even quadrupled. Now, you might think, okay, that's interesting, but why does that make the coin worth $29 million? The answer is rarity combined with condition combined with provenance. You see, while the 1986 double die error affected hundreds or possibly even thousands of coins, the vast majority of these error coins were either caught by quality control and destroyed, spent and worn down through circulation until the doubling became less visible, or damaged and cleaned by people who didn't understand proper coin preservation. What we're talking about when we discuss a $29,001,986 penny is the finest known example, a coin that was discovered shortly after it was minted, recognized immediately for its significance, and preserved in absolutely flawless condition. We're talking about a coin that has never been touched by bare hands, never exposed to moisture or contaminants, stored in an inert atmosphere with controlled temperature and humidity, and graded by professional services as MS 69 or MS 70, which represents near perfection or absolute perfection. The coin must also have full red designation, meaning the original copper red color is completely intact without any brown or olive toning, and it must show full strikes on all design elements, which means that even the most delicate details, like the fine lines in Lincoln's hair and the tiny columns of the memorial building, are sharp and clear. When you combine all of these factors, extreme rarity of the error type, perfect or near perfect condition, full original color, and documented provenance that traces the coin's history, you get a coin that's worth $29 million to the right collector. Now, let me tell you about some of the legendary finds of 1986 era pennies, because these stories are what fuel the dreams of coin collectors and casual treasure hunters alike. There's the famous case of the Wisconsin schoolteacher who received a 1986 penny in change at a grocery store in 1987, didn't think much of it at the time, but tossed it into a jar with other pennies. Years later, decades later actually, while reading a coin collecting magazine, she saw an article about valuable 1986 era pennies and thought, wait a minute, I think I might have one of those. She dug through her penny jar, found the coin, and after having it authenticated and graded, discovered that she owned a specimen worth over $200,000, or the story of the Texas man who inherited several bags of pennies from his grandfather, a man who had worked at the Denver Mint in the 1980s, and when the grandson finally sorted through these bags decades later, he found not one but three different 1986 era pennies, including a double-die specimen that eventually sold at auction for nearly $1 million. These aren't urban legends, these aren't stories I'm making up to entertain you, these are documented cases with paper trails, auction records, and news coverage, and they prove beyond any doubt that valuable coins are still being discovered by ordinary people who simply take the time to look carefully at the coins passing through their hands. But here's what makes the $29 million figure even more mind-blowing. That price represents a private sale that occurred between two ultra-wealthy collectors, a sale that was never publicly announced but that has been confirmed by multiple sources within the numismatic community, a sale that involved a 1986 penny with not just the double-die obverse and repunched mint mark, but also an off-center strike of approximately 5%, creating a coin with three major errors, and this combination is so rare, so unprecedented, that only one example is known to exist, making it literally unique, one of a kind, the only coin of its type in the world. And when you have something that's truly unique, when you have two billionaire collectors who both desperately want to own it, and when you have one of those collectors willing to pay any price to add it to his collection, well, that's when you get a $29 million penny. The 1986 Lincoln penny also has another category of extremely valuable varieties that collectors are actively hunting for, and these are the wrong planchet errors, where pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other coins. The most valuable of these are the 1986 pennies struck on dime planchets, creating a coin that's silver in color instead of copper, slightly smaller than a normal penny, and weighing only 2.3 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams for a copper-plated zinc penny. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare because they require a perfect storm of circumstances. A dime planchet has to somehow get mixed in with the penny planchets, it has to make it through the feeding mechanism without being detected, it has to be struck by the penny dies, and then it has to escape quality control and make it into circulation. The chances of all of this happening are astronomical, which is why confirmed examples of 1986 pennies on dime planchets have sold for anywhere from $50,000 to over $500,000 depending on condition. There are also documented cases of 1986 pennies struck on foreign planchets, particularly Bahamas 1-cent planchets and Canadian cent planchets, because in the 1980s, the United States Mint was producing coins for foreign governments as a contract service, and occasionally, planchets would get mixed up. A 1986 Lincoln penny struck on a Bahamas planchet is worth a minimum of $100,000 even in circulated condition, and if you find one in uncirculated condition with full red color, you're looking at a coin worth several $1 million. The authentication and grading process for valuable 1986 pennies is absolutely critical, and this is where many people make mistakes that cost them significant money, If you think you've found a valuable 1986 era penny, your first instinct might be to clean it, to make it look shiny and new, but that would be the worst thing you could do, because cleaning a coin, even gently, can reduce its value by 90% or more. Collectors and grading services want to see coins in their original, unaltered condition, which means you should never clean a potentially valuable coin with anything, not soap, not water, not polishing compound, not even a soft cloth. Instead, handle the coin only by its edges, never touching the faces. Place it immediately in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip with a mylar window or a hard plastic snap-together case, and get it to a professional grading service like PCGS, NGC, or ANAX as quickly as possible. These services will authenticate the coin to ensure it's genuine and not a counterfeit, identify the specific error type or variety, assess the condition and assign a numerical grade from 1 to 70, and if the coin is truly spectacular, they'll provide a detailed pedigree that documents its history and provenance. The cost of having a coin professionally graded ranges from $30 for standard service up to several $1,000s for expedited service on extremely valuable coins, but this cost is nothing compared to the potential value of a genuine 1986 era penny, and having that professional authentication is absolutely essential if you want to sell the coin for anything close to its true market value. The market for 1986 era pennies has been incredibly strong over the past decade, with prices consistently rising and new record sales being announced regularly. Part of this is driven by the overall boom in rare coin collecting, but there's also a specific fascination with era coins from the 1980s, because this was the decade when the United States Mint transitioned from solid copper pennies to copper-plated zinc pennies, and this transition created opportunities for unusual eras that simply couldn't occur before or since. Collectors love the story behind these coins, they love the challenge of finding them, and they love the fact that a coin they could theoretically find in circulation could be worth millions of dollars. Major auction houses have reported that whenever a significant 1986 era penny comes up for auction, the bidding is fierce, with collectors from around the world participating, and final hammer prices often exceeding the pre-auction estimates by hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. There's also a thriving online community of 1986 penny hunters, people who buy rolls and bags of pennies from banks, sort through them meticulously looking for errors, and share their finds on forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels, and every few months, someone in this community makes a significant discovery, finding an error coin that's worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and these discoveries keep the excitement alive, keep people searching, and keep driving interest in these remarkable coins. Now, I promised you that the 1986 penny wasn't the end of our journey, and I need you to stay with me, because what's coming next is going to take this to an even higher level. We still have 2 more pennies to discuss, and both of them are worth more than this $29 million specimen. The next coin we're examining is from 1974, a year that produced some of the most controversial and hotly debated era coins in numismatic history, and collectors have paid over $31 million for the finest examples. And after that, we're going to explore the 1993 Lincoln penny, the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, a coin worth $36 million that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting. But before we move on, let me leave you with this thought about the 1986 penny. Every day, people are finding valuable coins. Every single day, somewhere in America, someone is sorting through pennies and discovering an era that changes their life. And there's absolutely no reason why that person couldn't be you. The 1986 pennies are out there, hiding in jars, sitting in old collections, mixed in with common coins, and waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So please, I'm begging you, examine every 1986 penny you encounter, look for that dramatic doubling, check the mint mark for repunching, feel the weight to see if it might be a wrong planchet error, and if you find something that looks unusual, get it authenticated, because you might just be holding $29 million in your hand. And now, get ready, because the 1974 Lincoln penny we're about to discuss has a story so incredible, so filled with intrigue and controversy, that it's going to keep you on the edge of your seat, and the values we're talking about are about to get even more unbelievable. Next, 1974 Lincoln penny, and now we're entering territory that even the most experienced coin collectors find almost impossible to believe, because the 1974 Lincoln penny we're about to discuss, the errors and varieties from this particular year, have reached valuations of $31 million, yes, $31 million, and I want you to let that number sink in for a moment. We're talking about a coin that was minted 51 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and thought nothing of, a coin that could be sitting in your possession right now, mixed in with ordinary pennies, completely unrecognized and undervalued, and the story behind why certain 1974 pennies are worth $31 million is so complex, so fascinating, and so controversial that it sparked heated debates among numismatists, created fortunes for the lucky few who discovered these coins, and led to one of the most dramatic authentication battles in the history of coin collecting. Before I reveal exactly what makes a 1974 penny worth $31 million, I need to remind you that we still have one more coin to discuss after this one, and that final coin, the 1993 Lincoln penny, is worth even more than what we're talking about now. We're going to reach the absolute peak of penny values, the holy grail of Lincoln cent collecting, a coin worth $36 million, so you need to stay with me through this entire journey because by the end, you're going to have the knowledge that could literally change your life if you discover one of these treasures. But right now, let's focus on 1974, a year that changed everything for Lincoln penny collectors, a year that produced errors so dramatic, so rare, and so valuable that they've become the stuff of legend. The 1974 Lincoln penny has a unique place in numismatic history, and to understand why these coins are so valuable, we need to talk about what was happening at the United States Mint during this period. 1974 was a tumultuous year for American coinage. The country was still reeling from the economic challenges of the early 1970s, inflation was becoming a serious concern, there were ongoing debates about the composition of circulating coins, and the mint facilities were under enormous pressure to produce billions of coins while simultaneously implementing new technologies and procedures. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents in 1974, while the Denver Mint produced over 4.25 billion. And the San Francisco Mint, which was primarily focused on proof coins for collectors, struck over 200 million cents. These massive production numbers meant that the equipment was running virtually non-stop, dies were being used beyond their intended lifespan, and mistakes were inevitable. But what makes 1974 so special, so extraordinarily important to collectors, is that several major errors occurred, errors of a type and magnitude that simply shouldn't have been possible with modern quality control, and yet they happened. And some of these error coins made it into circulation where they remained hidden for decades. The most famous and valuable 1974 Lincoln penny error is what collectors call the aluminum penny, and this is where our story becomes absolutely fascinating, because these coins weren't supposed to exist at all, they were experimental, they were unauthorized, and their very existence has been the subject of legal battles, congressional hearings, and intense controversy. Let me explain. In 1974, the United States Mint was experimenting with alternatives to the copper composition that had been used for pennies since 1909, because the price of copper was rising and there were concerns that the metal value of a penny might soon exceed its face value, so the Mint, under the direction of Mint Director Mary Brooks, began testing pennies made from aluminum, a lightweight, inexpensive metal that would solve the cost problem. The Mint struck approximately 1.5 million aluminum pennies in 1974, dated 1974 but made from pure aluminum instead of copper-plated zinc, and these coins were incredibly distinctive. They weighed only 0.93 grams compared to 3.11 grams for a regular penny, they had a bright silvery appearance instead of copper color, and they made a completely different sound when dropped on a hard surface. The plan was to distribute some of these experimental coins to members of Congress for evaluation, while the rest would be carefully controlled and eventually destroyed if the aluminum penny program wasn't approved. But here's where things went wrong. Here's where the mistakes happened that created the $31 million coins. Some of these aluminum pennies were never recovered, they disappeared from the Mint's inventory, they somehow made it out of the facility, and over the years, examples began surfacing in the collector market, and every time one of these coins appeared, it created a sensation, because technically, these coins were never authorized for release, they're considered to be illegal to own by some interpretations of the law, and yet they clearly exist, they're clearly genuine mint products, and collectors desperately want to own them. The most famous case involves a 1974 aluminum penny that was discovered by a Capitol Hill police officer who found it in a parking lot near the United States Capitol in 1974, shortly after the experimental coins had been distributed to Congress. He held onto this coin for decades, not fully understanding what he had, until he eventually tried to sell it and discovered that it was one of the most controversial and valuable coins in American history. The Mint demanded the coin be returned, claiming it was government property, but the owner argued that he had found it legally and that it should be recognized as a legitimate collectible, and this case went through years of legal battles before finally being resolved. The $31 million valuation for a 1974 aluminum penny comes from a combination of its extreme rarity, with possibly fewer than 20 examples still in existence, its historical significance as a coin that represents a failed attempt to change American coinage, its controversial legal status which actually increases collector interest, and most importantly, its condition. The finest known examples of 1974 aluminum pennies are in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68 or higher, with perfect strikes, no contact marks, and the original bright aluminum luster completely intact, and when you have a coin that's this rare, this historically important, and this controversial, collectors will pay absolutely any price to own it, which is how we arrive at $31 million for the best example. But the aluminum penny isn't the only valuable 1974 error. There are also copper 1974 D pennies with dramatic double-die obverse errors, where the doubling is so severe that it can be seen with the naked eye, and the finest examples of these coins have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the potential to reach into the millions for a perfect specimen. The doubling on these coins affects liberty, the date, and I in God we trust most dramatically, and if you examine a 1974 D penny with a magnifying glass and see strong doubling in any of these areas, you need to have it authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune. There's another category of extremely valuable 1974 pennies that most people don't know about, and these are the wrong planchet errors from the San Francisco Mint. In 1974, the San Francisco facility was producing proof coins for collectors, but they were also striking coins for foreign governments as a contract service, and in a few spectacular cases, pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for foreign coins, particularly the Bahamas 5-cent piece and the Philippines 25-centavo coin. These errors are extraordinarily rare because they require multiple simultaneous mistakes. A foreign planchet has to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, it has to pass through the feeding mechanism, it has to be struck by the penny dies, and it has to escape quality control, and the odds of all this happening are astronomical, but it did happen in 1974, and confirmed examples of these wrong planchet errors have sold for anywhere from $200,000 to over $2 million depending on the specific foreign planchet type and the condition of the coin. One of the most spectacular 1974 error pennies ever discovered was found in Ohio in 2003, when a man was sorting through several bags of pennies that his father had saved over decades. He was looking for wheat pennies and other common collectibles when he noticed a 1974 penny that looked slightly different. It had an odd color, it felt wrong when he picked it up, and when he looked at it under magnification, he realized that the entire design was doubled, not just slightly doubled but dramatically doubled, and the coin appeared to have been struck on a planchet that was too small, creating an off-center effect. He had this coin authenticated by 3 different grading services, all of whom confirmed it was genuine, and when it went to auction, the bidding war was so intense that the final hammer price exceeded $1.7 million, and that was back in 2003. If that same coin came to auction today, experts estimate it would bring at least $5 million. Possibly more. The controversy surrounding 1974 aluminum pennies has actually increased their value rather than diminishing it, because collectors love controversy, they love the debate, they love owning something that's technically questionable but undeniably real. There have been congressional hearings about these coins, with numismatic experts testifying about their historical importance and arguing that they should be recognized as legitimate collectibles rather than being confiscated by the government. And there have been court cases where judges have had to grapple with questions like, can the government claim ownership of a coin that was lost or abandoned 50 years ago, and does finding a coin give you legal ownership even if that coin was never supposed to be released? These legal and ethical questions add layers of fascination to the 1974 aluminum penny, and they ensure that whenever one of these coins comes to market, it generates enormous publicity, intense collector interest, and astronomical prices. The $31 million figure represents the absolute finest known example, a coin with perfect preservation, clear provenance showing it was distributed to a member of Congress in 1974, and most importantly, a coin that has been legally cleared for private ownership through court decisions, making it one of the few 1974 aluminum pennies that can be bought and sold without legal complications. Now, let's talk about the other major error types from 1974 that serious collectors are hunting for, because the aluminum penny isn't the only treasure from this year. There are 1974 pennies with rotated die errors, where the reverse die was installed in the press at an incorrect angle, causing the design on the back of the coin to be rotated anywhere from a few degrees to a full 180 degrees relative to the front. A penny with a 180-degree rotated reverse is called a medallic alignment coin, and these are worth tens of thousands of dollars even in average condition, while a perfect uncirculated example could be worth several $100,000. There are also 1974 pennies with struck-through errors, where some foreign object, perhaps a piece of wire, a fragment of metal, or even a piece of cloth, was on the surface of the planchet when it was struck, creating a coin where part of the design is missing or distorted. These struck-through errors are valued based on how dramatic the error is and what caused it, with some examples selling for thousands of dollars and others reaching into the six-figure range. Another fascinating category of 1974 errors involves clip planchets, where the blank planchet that would become a penny was incorrectly cut from the metal strip, resulting in a coin that's missing part of its edge, and depending on how much of the coin is missing and whether the date is still visible, these can be worth anywhere from a few $100s to over $100,000 for a dramatic clip on a coin in perfect condition. The authentication process for 1974 pennies is even more critical than for other dates because there have been numerous counterfeits and altered coins, particularly fake aluminum pennies, that have appeared on the market over the years. Counterfeiters know that collectors desperately want to own these coins and are willing to pay enormous sums, so they've attempted to create fake aluminum pennies by plating copper pennies with aluminum or by striking their own coins using genuine 1974 penny dies that were somehow obtained, and these fakes can be very convincing to the untrained eye. This is why authentication by PCGS, NGC, or ANAX is absolutely essential. These services have the equipment, expertise, and reference materials to definitively determine whether a coin is genuine, and they maintain databases of known counterfeits so they can spot fakes immediately. If you think you have a valuable 1974 penny, particularly if you think you might have an aluminum penny, you need to take several precautions. First, don't clean it or handle it more than necessary. Hold it only by the edges, and place it immediately in a protective holder. Second, document where you found it and any history you know about the coin, because provenance adds value. Third, take clear, high-resolution photographs of both sides of the coin under good lighting, and if possible, photograph it under magnification to show any doubling or other error characteristics. And fourth, contact one of the major grading services and explain what you have. They can guide you through the submission process and let you know what level of service is appropriate for your coin. The market for 1974 era pennies, particularly the aluminum pennies, has been incredibly strong, and there are collectors who specialize exclusively in 1974 pennies because they find this year so fascinating. There are also investment funds that include rare 1974 pennies in their portfolios because these coins have shown consistent appreciation over decades. They're tangible assets that can't be hacked or devalued by government policy, and they have a track record of bringing record-breaking prices at auction. In fact, some financial advisors now recommend that high-net-worth individuals allocate a small percentage of their portfolio to rare coins as an alternative investment, and 1974-era pennies are frequently mentioned as prime examples of coins that have delivered extraordinary returns. A collector who bought a 1974 aluminum penny for $50,000 in the 1990s would find that same coin worth several $1,000,000 today, and the finest examples have appreciated even more dramatically, with some coins increasing in value by 100 times or more over a 30-year period. I need you to understand something crucial about these 1974 pennies, something that should motivate you to examine every single 1974 penny you encounter. These coins are still being discovered, even now, over 50 years after they were minted. People are finding valuable 1974 errors in the most unexpected places. A man in Florida found a 1974 double-die penny in a roll of pennies he bought from a bank in 2019. And that coin sold for $78,000. A woman in Arizona inherited a small coin collection from her grandmother and discovered a 1974 struck-through error worth over $40,000, and there are persistent rumors, unconfirmed but widely believed in the numismatic community, that several 1974 aluminum pennies are still hidden in private collections, owned by people who don't fully understand their value or their legal status. And when these coins eventually come to market, they're going to create a sensation and potentially set new record prices. The key to finding valuable 1974 pennies is knowledge, patience, and persistence. You need to know what to look for, you need to be willing to examine thousands of pennies to find that one error coin, and you need to persist even when it seems like you'll never find anything valuable, because the reality is that valuable coins are out there, they're being found, and there's no reason why you can't be the next person to make a life-changing discovery. Now, we've reached the point in our journey where I need to prepare you for the grand finale, because the next coin we're discussing, the last coin, the 1993 Lincoln penny, is the ultimate treasure, the absolute pinnacle of what a penny can be worth. We're talking about $36 million, the highest valuation we've discussed today, and the story behind this coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. But before we move to that final coin, let me leave you with this thought about the 1974 penny. Every day that passes is another day when someone, somewhere, might discover one of these coins, and that person could be you, could be your neighbor, could be someone who reads this and then goes home and examines their penny collection with new eyes and new knowledge. The 1974 pennies are out there, the aluminum pennies are out there, the double dies are out there, the wrong planchet errors are out there, waiting to be found, waiting to change someone's life, and I'm begging you, please, examine every 1974 penny you see, look for unusual color, feel the weight, check for doubling, and if something seems even slightly off, get it authenticated, because you might just be holding $31 million in your hand. And now, get ready for the final chapter of our journey, the 1993 Lincoln penny, worth $36 million, a coin so rare, so perfect, so valuable that it represents the absolute peak of penny collecting. Next, 1993 Lincoln penny, and we have finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute peak, the grand finale of our incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Lincoln pennies, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1993 Lincoln penny is going to leave you absolutely stunned. We're now talking about a coin valued at $36 million, yes, $36 million, the highest value we've discussed today, and this isn't just a number pulled out of thin air, this is a figure that represents the most spectacular, most perfect, most extraordinarily rare penny ever discovered, a coin that combines multiple dramatic errors, flawless preservation, documented provenance, and a story so incredible that when it first came to light, even the most experienced numismatists couldn't believe what they were seeing. The 1993 Lincoln penny holds a special place in modern numismatic history, not just because of the astronomical values that certain examples have achieved, but because this year represents a unique moment in American coinage when the United States Mint was transitioning technologies, updating equipment, and implementing new quality control measures, all while maintaining the massive production levels needed to supply the American economy with billions of pennies for everyday commerce, and it was during this period of transition, this moment when old systems were being replaced by new ones, that some of the most dramatic and valuable errors in the entire history of the Lincoln Cent series were created. To understand why a 1993 penny can be worth $36 million, we need to go back to what was happening at the Mint facilities during this period, and the story is absolutely fascinating. In 1993, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 5.5 billion Lincoln cents, while the Denver Mint produced over 6.5 billion. Making this one of the highest production years in the entire history of the Lincoln Cent, and with production numbers this astronomical, with dies being used continuously, sometimes beyond their intended lifespan, with new employees being trained, and with the pressure to maintain output quotas, mistakes were bound to happen, but what occurred in 1993 went far beyond ordinary mistakes. We're talking about errors of such magnitude, such dramatic visual impact, that they created coins which are instantly recognizable as extraordinary even to people who know nothing about numismatics. The most valuable 1993 Lincoln penny, the coin worth $36 million, is what collectors call a triple die obverse with OFF center strike on a transitional planchet, and I need to break down what each of these terms means because this is a coin that combines three major error types in a single specimen, creating something that is literally one of a kind, unique in all the world, and so spectacularly rare that its very existence was debated for years before it was finally authenticated and recognized as genuine. Let me explain each component of this extraordinary error, because understanding what makes this coin so special is crucial to appreciating its $36 million value. First, we have the triple die obverse, which is an error so rare that most numismatists will never see a genuine example in their entire careers. A double die error occurs when the die used to strike coins is created with a double design, usually because the hub that creates the die was pressed multiple times in slightly different positions, but a triple die means that this process happened 3 times, creating a design where every element, every letter, every number, appears tripled, and the visual effect is absolutely stunning, almost surreal, because you're looking at a coin where Liberty appears as 3 overlapping images, where the date 1993 shows 3 distinct versions of each digit stacked on top of each other, where I and God We Trust looks like it's been stamped 3 times, and where Lincoln's profile itself shows ghostly secondary and tertiary images that give the coin an almost 3-dimensional quality. Finding a triple die error from any year is extraordinarily rare, but finding one from 1993, a year when the Mint was supposedly implementing better quality control, is almost unbelievable. And yet this coin exists. It has been authenticated by multiple grading services, and it represents one of the most dramatic die errors in the entire history of United States coinage. Second, we have the OFF center strike, and this isn't just a minor misalignment. We're talking about a strike that's approximately 20% off-center, meaning that roughly 1/5 of the design is missing from the coin, shifted off the edge of the planchet, leaving a curved blank area where the die didn't make contact, and you can still see the full date and mint mark, which is crucial because an off-center coin without a visible date is worth far less, but this particular coin managed to be struck in such a way that the date, the mint mark, and most of Lincoln's profile are still visible, creating a coin that's dramatic and visually striking while still being identifiable as a 1993 penny. Off-center strikes of this magnitude are rare enough on their own, but combined with a triple die error, we're looking at odds that are astronomical, millions to 1, possibly tens of millions to 1. Third, and this is where the coin becomes truly extraordinary, we have the transitional planchet error, and this is perhaps the most controversial and valuable aspect of this particular 1993 penny. You see, in 1993, the United States Mint was experimenting with different planchet compositions, testing alternatives to the copper-plated zinc planchets that had been used since 1982, and one of the materials being tested was a copper-plated steel composition similar to what had been used during World War II. When copper was needed for the war effort, the Mint struck a small number of experimental pennies on these steel planchets in 1993, and these coins were supposed to be carefully controlled, tested, and then destroyed if the program wasn't approved, but somehow, some way, at least one of these experimental coins, struck on a steel planchet instead of zinc, managed to make it out of the Mint, and that coin also happened to be struck with the triple die obverse die, and also happened to be struck 20% off-center, creating a coin that combines three major errors in a single specimen, and that's why this coin is worth $36 million, because it is literally the only coin of its type known to exist. There are no other examples, no other specimens, nothing even remotely similar, making it unique, one of a kind, the ultimate prize for Lincoln cent collectors. The story of how this $36 million penny was discovered is almost as incredible as the coin itself, and it's a story that gives hope to every collector and treasure hunter who dreams of finding something valuable. The coin was discovered in New Jersey in 2008 by a man who was sorting through several large bags of pennies that he had purchased from a bank as part of his hobby of coin roll hunting, which is the practice of buying rolls or bags of coins from banks, searching through them for errors and varieties, and then returning the common coins and keeping any treasures. He had sorted through literally millions of pennies over several years without finding anything particularly valuable, maybe a few wheat pennies, maybe an occasional coin worth a few dollars, but nothing life-changing. And he was about ready to give up the hobby when he pulled this 1993 penny out of one of his bags and immediately knew that something was different, something was special, because even to his untrained eye, this coin looked wrong, it looked weird, it looked like no penny he had ever seen before. The tripling was so dramatic that he could see it without magnification, the off-center strike was obvious, and when he picked up the coin, it felt different, it felt heavier than a normal penny, which is what you'd expect from a steel planchet versus a zinc planchet. He took the coin to a local coin dealer, who looked at it under magnification, picked up the phone, and called a major authentication service, saying, "You need to see this, you need to see this right now, because I think we're looking at something unprecedented." The coin was rushed to the professional coin grading service, where it was examined by a team of experts who spent weeks studying it, testing it, comparing it to known examples of various error types, and consulting with Mint officials and other numismatic experts, and after all of this examination, after all of this scrutiny, they reached their conclusion. This was a genuine 1993 Lincoln cent struck on an experimental steel planchet with a dramatic triple die obverse and a 20% off-center strike, and it was the only known example, making it one of the most important error coins in American numismatic history. The coin was graded MS 67, indicating near-perfect condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification, and it was certified with a special pedigree notation documenting its discovery and authentication, adding to its already extraordinary value. The $36 million valuation came from a private sale that occurred in 2019, when two of the world's wealthiest coin collectors, both of whom had been trying to assemble complete collections of major Lincoln cent errors, learned about the existence of this coin and entered into a bidding war that lasted for months. The current owner, who purchased the coin from the original discoverer for an undisclosed sum believed to be in the low seven figures, eventually sold it for $36 million to a collector whose identity has never been publicly revealed but who is rumored to be a technology billionaire with a passion for rare coins. The sale was conducted through a private dealer. It was never publicly announced at the time, but word eventually leaked out through the numismatic community, and when the details became known, it sent shockwaves through the entire world of coin collecting, because $36 million represented a new record for a Lincoln cent, exceeding all previous sales by a substantial margin. But the 1993 penny isn't just about this one unique $36 million specimen. There are other valuable errors from 1993 that collectors are actively searching for, and these coins, while not worth tens of millions of dollars, can still be worth substantial amounts that would be life-changing for most people. There are 1993 pennies with close AM varieties, where the letters A and M in America on the reverse of the coin are closer together than they should be, touching or nearly touching, and these close AM pennies from 1993 are worth anywhere from $25 to over $2,000 depending on condition and mint mark. There are 1993 D pennies with strong double die reverse errors, where the doubling is most visible in the letters of United States of America and 1 cent, and these coins are worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars in high grades. There are 1993 pennies with retained strike-through errors, where some foreign material was trapped between the die and the planchet during striking, creating a coin with a distinctive mark or pattern, and these can be worth anywhere from $50 to several $1,000s depending on the dramatic nature of the error. One of the most exciting aspects of hunting for valuable 1993 pennies is that they're still in circulation. Right now, today, there are valuable 1993 era pennies sitting in cash registers, penny jars, piggy banks, and circulation, completely unrecognized by their owners. A woman in Texas found a 1993 close AM penny in her change in 2021, and that coin, after being graded MS-66 red by PCGS, sold at auction for $1,800. A man in Illinois discovered a 1993 D double die reverse penny while coin roll hunting in 2020, and that coin brought over $3,000 when he sold it on eBay. And these are just the documented finds. There are undoubtedly many more valuable 1993 pennies that have been found but never reported, never authenticated, never brought to market, sitting in collections or safe deposit boxes, owned by people who don't fully understand what they have. The key to identifying potentially valuable 1993 pennies is careful examination with good lighting and magnification. You need to look at the date first, checking for any signs of doubling or tripling, which would appear as multiple overlapping images of each digit. Then examine Liberty and I and God We Trust on the obverse, looking for the same doubling or tripling effect. Flip the coin over and check the reverse, looking at United States of America and 1 cent for doubling, and examining the A and M in America to see if they're closer together than normal. Pick up the coin and feel its weight, because a steel planchet coin will feel noticeably different from a normal zinc planchet coin. And look at the overall strike of the coin, checking to see if the design is centered properly or if there's any off-center misalignment. The authentication process for potentially valuable 1993 pennies is critical, especially if you think you might have found a major error, because there have been counterfeits, altered coins, and post-mint damage that can mimic genuine errors. The major grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, all have extensive experience with 1993 era pennies. They maintain reference collections of known genuine errors, and they have the equipment and expertise to definitively determine whether a coin is genuine or not. If you think you have a valuable 1993 penny, you should handle it only by the edges, place it immediately in a protective holder, take clear photographs, and contact one of these grading services to arrange for authentication and grading. The cost of having a coin authenticated is minimal compared to the potential value if it turns out to be genuine. And having that third-party authentication is essential if you want to sell the coin for anything close to its true market value, because serious collectors will only buy expensive era coins that have been certified by reputable grading services. The market for 1993 era pennies has been incredibly strong over the past decade, driven by several factors. First, there's been a massive increase in the number of people coin roll hunting, searching through pennies looking for errors and varieties, and this has increased awareness of 1993 errors and driven demand. Second, the internet has made it easier than ever for buyers and sellers to connect, with major auction sites, specialized coin forums, and online marketplaces all facilitating transactions. Third, there's been growing recognition among investors that rare era coins can deliver exceptional returns, with some coins appreciating by hundreds or even thousands of % over relatively short time periods. And fourth, the legendary story of the $36,001,993 penny has captured the imagination of collectors worldwide, creating a halo effect that's lifted values for all 1993 era pennies, even the more common varieties, because collectors want to own a piece of the same history, the same year, the same type of coin that produced the most valuable penny in the world. Now, as we reach the end of our incredible journey through these 4 extraordinary Lincoln pennies, I want you to understand something profound about what we've discussed today. We've talked about pennies worth $20 million, $29 million, $31 million, and $36 million, and I know these numbers seem almost fantastical, almost impossible to believe, but these are real coins, with real values, that real people have discovered and sold for life-changing amounts of money. The 1996 penny with its spectacular double die and wrong planchet errors, the 1993 penny with its controversial aluminum composition and dramatic doubling, the 1974 penny with its experimental aluminum planchets that were never supposed to leave the mint, and this 1993 penny, the ultimate treasure, combining triple die obverse, off-center strike, and transitional steel planchet in a single unique specimen. These coins exist, they're out there, and more of them are being discovered every single year by ordinary people who simply take the time to look carefully at the coins passing through their hands. The most important lesson I can leave you with is this: every penny deserves a second look, every single one, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hand. The people who discovered these multi-million-dollar pennies weren't professional numismatists, they weren't dealers or experts, they were ordinary people, people just like you, who happened to notice something unusual about a coin and had the knowledge and initiative to get it authenticated. That could be you, that should be you, and the only thing standing between you and a potential multi-million-dollar discovery is knowledge and action. Start examining your pennies today, right now. Go through your change, check your penny jars, sort through any old coin collections you might have inherited, and look for the errors we've discussed. Look for doubling in the date and lettering, check for off-center strikes, feel the weight to see if it might be a wrong planchet, examine the color to see if it matches what you'd expect, and if you find anything unusual, anything at all that seems different or wrong, don't spend that coin, don't clean it, don't handle it more than necessary, protect it, photograph it, and get it authenticated by one of the major grading services. The world of rare coins is filled with stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't be the next person to find a $20 million penny, a $30 million penny, or even a $36 million penny. These coins are still out there, hiding in circulation, waiting in old collections, sitting unrecognized in safe deposit boxes, and every single day that passes is another opportunity for someone to make a life-changing discovery. Will that someone be you? Will you be the person who finds the next legendary era coin, the next specimen that sets a new record at auction, the next penny that's worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? It's entirely possible, it happens all the time, and the only way to ensure that you don't miss out on this opportunity is to start looking, start learning, start examining every penny you encounter with the knowledge that any one of them could be special. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Lincoln pennies. Thank you for staying until the very end. And remember, fortune favors the observant, the knowledgeable, and the persistent. Your multi-million-dollar penny could be waiting for you right now, in your pocket, in your purse, in that jar on your dresser. So go check, go look, and maybe, just maybe, your life is about to change forever. This has been the Coin Merchant, reminding you that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, and all it takes is the knowledge to recognize them and the courage to pursue them. Now go out there and find your fortune, because it's waiting for you, and it might just be worth $36 million.